welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Welcome to Raven's Nest Season 8 discussion with our bannerman.
Yeah, Sir Ezra, as Lord Adam Parker is calling the Grand Maester of Technical Difficulties. Unfortunately, he's experiencing some audio issues with his newfangled iPhone. Well, that's why I use Android.
You know what? I literally have a major complaint to make now Apple. This is insane. I mean, you take away that 3.5 millimeter jack and I can't do squat for recording right now. So it's weird. It's really strange. But
explain to everyone the kind of scenario you have going on right now. I think you have the tiny little earbuds inside, then you have other headphones on. I think you have like two microphones in front of your face. Is that what's happening?
I literally do. So I have right now my over-the-ear headset on with my microphone plugged into some converter cable, a 3.5 millimeter converter cable, into a lightning, whatever that's called, thingamajigger, into the my new Appleton, Thunderbolt thing, plugged into the phone, and then underneath I have my AirPod, only one, plugged into the left side of my ear. It's actually in my ear, so I can actually hear everyone on Discord talking.
Perfect.
It's insane, and I have a microphone in front of me just in case, we lose any of my audio. So
perfect.
It's a joke.
Hey, all right. Well, it is good to be back to Raven's Nest. We haven't had one of these in a while. And today we're just doing kind of a round robin discussion, get everybody's thoughts kind of on season 8. We haven't done a Raven's Nest yet with everyone to kind of hear, what did you think of season 8? Love it, hate it. I think everybody has really different opinions. You and I, Sir Ezra, I think we had kind of, because we did a Raven's Nest in the middle. And I think everyone was really optimistic after the long night.
Right.
And I think that changed in the second half of the season. So.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I was hopeful right up until the last episode. And I kept saying, what is Bran going to do?
Yeah.
And
he became king.
Yeah.
Which I think.
Yeah,
right. I think irked a lot of people. Anyway, we're gonna get your guys' thoughts on it. Really quickly, I guess. What did you kind of think, Sir Ezra? I mean, what was your kind of, now that we've had a little time to kind of, we're a little removed from season 8, or now that we're back in the books, what do you kind of think of it now that you've had, we've had some time to think about it and absorb it?
Well, I mean, I still enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I just didn't enjoy it as much as previous seasons. And I think it's because of the lack of source material and not really knowing some of the details. What made the other seasons better and what made them a lot more, I don't know, just like they were jarring, but not in a way that was like you were just doing it to get a reaction. I mean, there was build up, there was subtlety, there was foreshadowing, a major, something would happen like the Red Wedding, and you'd look back over the last couple episodes and be like, wow. Or even in the books too, like there's all those clues and hinting and foreshadowing, and so you're like, wow, that's really cool, and it lands really well. And then you can't really do that in this season as much because we don't have the source material. So it was still enjoyable, and I had a fun time watching it and a fun time discussing it with our bannerman and with you, and I look forward to the prequels now. I mean, under new direction and everything, but I don't know, man. There were parts that there were really good moments for me that I enjoyed. Jenny of Oldstones. I enjoyed Brienne of Tarth kind of writing in the White Book, and I mean Sansa getting her crown in a way. So there are points that I really did enjoy, but there's other bits that I'm just sort of like, what happened? It was kind of, I don't know, either rushed is the word we've used to describe the end there, but or disorganized, or not enough evidence to kind of support why some of these things happened. And we just kind of, both of us, I think, have said that we needed more time and more episodes.
Right.
I still, though, that last episode, you challenged me to go back and kind of rewatch it, and I would challenge everyone else to go back and watch it a second and a third time and see if it doesn't become more enjoyable, because it does. I watched it with my sister, and I'm sort of like, all right. I mean, I'm not guessing anymore as to what's happening. I know what's going to happen, and I can just enjoy it. And it was better.
Yeah. So for me, when I go back and I kind of think about it and rewatch it, I think that the first 3 episodes are great. I think that they are fantastic, and it is a well put together story. I still feel like more people kind of should have died, but the first episode was good. It was a good build up, and really, it's the second half that for the 4, 5, and 6 that kind of I think fell a little more flat. And then the whole Dany going mad business. There was foreshadowing throughout the season. Sam telling Jon, like when she's talking to Sam and she talks about, oh well, I kind of killed your dad and your brother, and then Sam tells Jon that there is that, when you go back and rewatch it, there is that, even that foreshadowing in the last season. But again, as you said, I really feel like it could have been about 1. It really needed to be like 2 more episodes, but I think 1 with them wanting to make it a shorter season would have worked a little bit better, even with the episodes being longer. I still feel like you probably could have fit in 1 just 50-minute episode, and that would have kind of bridged the gap between the 2, and maybe have Jon kill Dany in like episode 6, and then the entire episode 7 could have been more of the Bran becoming king, and then it would have been fleshed out a little bit more, and the ending would have felt just a little bit better. And then maybe episode 3 ends with Missandei getting or episode 4 ends with Missandei getting captured, not her getting captured in the middle of the episode and then being killed at the end. There wasn't that. Yeah. Her getting captured would have been a super big moment to end the episode on. It just seems like so much happens in that 4th episode that if you could have pushed that, spread that one out a little bit, I think everything else would have worked just a little bit better. So
yeah. Real quick on that, because you could have had more dialogue with Dany about that loss and what it meant to her. We could have gotten some of that, and we've been like, oh crap, she's really losing it.
Yeah, I mean, think of how to me it's that 4th episode is really what, because 5 by itself is a great episode. If you just watch 5 for what it is, I mean, you use the word gourd. I mean, it's the her just burning down the city is a huge epic moment, but it didn't have the weight behind it because of the lack of context. That the episode before, there's so much that happens in that 4th episode with the episode begins in Winterfell. I mean, the episode begins in Winterfell and Jorah's dead, and we don't even really see that, and we don't get enough of Dany grieving over Jorah Mormont. So that 4 was, to me, is really what hurt the season. So anyway, I still liked it. I went, like, as I told you, I went back and I rewatched the last episode kind of for what it is, and I really liked actually if you just go back and you just watch you don't have to watch the full episode. Just watch the last like half hour, the post Dany being killed stuff, the kind of epilogue stuff of Jon getting go to North and Bran becoming king, and it's pretty cool actually. It's just there's so much that happens in that episode. It's like you have to kind of shift gears, and that's how you have to do it. In a lot of the last 3 episodes, is so much happens. You're kind of shifting gears because they should be multiple episodes, but they're kind of all jam-packed into a few. So, but at the end of the day, I still like the season. The Long Night is easily my favorite episode of Game of Thrones ever. I think it's a masterpiece. So,
okay.
So, all right.
Awesome.
Well, we're going to do kind of round robin. Everyone's going to get a chance to kind of speak once. Just kind of your thoughts on season 8. Did you like it? Do you hate it? Are you still kind of hopeful for the books? Do you think the books will be different? So, I'm just going to start picking people at random here. And I think I'm going to go with Lady Sarah if she's ready. I'm going to unmute her. Maybe she might be ready. Lady Sarah, I have you unmuted, so you could begin whenever you are ready. You may just have to unmute yourself. and then we'll start going in the group chat here and having people raise hands and possibly get an order going so we can get everyone going.
Okay.
Hey, there we go.
Right on. I think it should be a full moon. I think we're all starting off on left feet today. So feelings about season 8. I most definitely would agree with Sir Matt in saying that episode 3 is just one of those standalone episodes that no matter how you feel about season 8 or all of that, you can't get that taken away from you. That was the suspense and the buildup and just that whole feeling of excitement. Like everybody was so jacked up for it. We were all tired and a little confused and a little bit like, why is this happening by the time you get to the last episode? Mm-hmm. That I think so much of us were still so hopeful and wide-eyed and just ready for this beautiful story to spell out and to kind of tie up. And so, yes, most definitely those first couple episodes, amazing. Episode 3, stunning, beautiful. The dragon fights were something out of Fire and Blood. I don't know if they had like any early material from Fire and Blood, but the way it was described in every single dragon fight in that book, the way they snap, the way they rip, the way they tear and claw and pull the wings apart, that was just it was like emotional seeing that. I never thought seeing dragons fight would be something so exciting, for me. I'm not necessarily a girly girl or a tomboy, but holy crap, give me the dragon fights all the time. It was beautiful, and especially when Dany and Jon are just kind of floating up there together, as awful as her reaction was to him telling her, this is I'm actually a Targaryen, I'm your nephew, for God's sakes. And she was just she just reacted to it so oddly. It seemed like there was still a little bit of hope for the two of them throughout episode 3, especially when you got those, stunning moments of them looking down at the Dothraki and then, taking off on the dragons. And, there was still some thread together there with them. And then episode 4 happens and it felt like everything just got hijacked. I was like, are we in the Twilight Zone? Do we need to give a Midal to Daenerys or Sansa or somebody? Like, the one thing that bugged me about last season, even though they tied it up very well, was the Arya and Sansa kind of, cattiness, untrustworthiness, but they did that because they were basically pulling the Littlefinger on Littlefinger. The minute Daenerys comes in with Jon and Sansa has that very cold reaction to her, I understand she basically took away Jon's crown, which he did willing himself, but I just thought that moment was the first sort of like, I don't feel like this really fits with everything. And so, when her and Sansa get a little bit close, Jorah tells her, go sit down with her. And they, they start agreeing. And then, what happens after the war? And Daenerys is like, I take my claim. And they pull back from each other again. It just, that part was such a bummer. That was such a letdown. There was I think a lot of people had a lot of hope for Daenerys and Sansa clicking. I could have almost seen like Tyrion being the hand of the queen and Sansa being the hand of the king for Jon. It felt like those could have all merged together really almost seamlessly. And then episode 4 happens and you get, her getting the hell out of Winterfell, taking the dragons that need to rest, taking all these men that need to rest, even though so many more men pop up at Dragonstone. We've got like a bunch of Dothraki and and Unsullied. So in that moment when she's turning the corner and and Rhaegal just goes down. I was just like, I can't. I was like, Jon, this is not fair to Jon. He only got to ride the dragon for like
Right.
2 times. That's not fair. Like it seemed like everything sort of falling apart, and I could feel Daenerys's spiral, and I understood it, and I could clearly see where they were going with it. I didn't like it, but I went with it, and then you get the bells, and you're just that was the last moment of suspense. It was like, okay, are we gonna have the Daenerys that's been with us this whole time, who has freed slaves, locked up her dragon because it maybe killed a child, who's always been this righteous sort of figure, is she gonna go straight for the rightful target? She has every right to go straight for that castle and burn it down and desecrate it and get rid of Cersei. Or is she really going to do what we don't want her to do? And she does what we don't want her to do. And it didn't have that same effect as, like you guys were saying, as like the Red Wedding or a Hodor moment. It didn't give you that like, whoa, wow, that's crazy. And I don't get it, but we will get it. But like, and then it was just for Jon to just walk up to her and just kind of, pull the Ramsay Bolton, that was kind of suspenseful for a minute. When you heard the knife go in, it was like, for a moment, I thought maybe Daenerys actually did it to Jon. It's like, if she's this mad, if she's gone this crazy, I could see her eliminating him as one last target. That may have been like a cooler spin, but the story ended how it ended. I just want to know where Drogon took her, and I want to know if the Unsullied all died once they got to the island of Noth, if the butterfly disease came and took them all out.
Yeah.
That's wondering what's happening after. That's what they did to us, right? We're sort of like, what happens afterwards? It's
like is Bran like looking in the mirror at the end of the night and winking with the blue eye? It's like, if we had just one more little thing of suspense right there at the end of the episode, just one more thing, seeing a bloody footprint in the snow or something, just that, like, I just really hope the whole Night King thing isn't just a trope to lure you into a new show that we did not need to be lured into, because we're all here for it no matter
right.
what.
Yeah, we're super fans.
Yes, we're super fans. We're gonna show up. So I'm really hopeful for the books and to see how it's all spelled out, and I think it's going to be fine.
Do you think the books are going to be different?
I think they're going to be. I think a lot of the ending threads will pan out, but I think there's going to be so much that's going to be different, and I don't know if it's just because of the show. I know he watches it, so it'll be interesting to see what smaller things maybe build the road, get the building blocks to go down certain roads.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he does the Mad Queen thing, he's gonna, it'll be more of a George moment. Hopefully it'll be more of a gut punch rather than like a cocking your head to the side like a dog does, when you're like, huh? Like, wait, okay, this is happening? Where like in the books, it's like, oh my God, this is happening.
Right.
Like, that's the reactions I'm hoping to get in the books, and I think they'll be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to make, so actually you made me, Lady Sarah always makes us think, but because some folks will complain that like it's too abrupt and we didn't see it coming, or there was no evidence to see this turn happen. And then other folks are kind of like, isn't that what you want though? Don't you want sort of like which do we want? Do we want it to seem like it just happens, or do we want it to build up over time?
Yeah. Do you want the simmer or the boil?
Yeah, and that's what
I don't. That's sort of the question, I guess, because as you say in the books, it could be that gut punch. Will there be the evidence that everyone? So Maglum's, typing in the Discord chat that he's someone who wants the evidence, wants to be able to see some of the. And actually, to be fair, if the way George would pull this up in the books is, it would be subtle. It would be there. The hints and the clues would all be there. Everything would be there, and you'd look back in hindsight or in a reread, and you'd go, "Wow, it was all there." Right.
Exactly. He's very good with the gut punch, and then you being able to kind of go back, like you said, go back and find all the threads. Like Arya will how that pans out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
thanks, Lady Sarah. Yeah, it was awesome.
All right, Lord Adam Parker, you are unmuted, so you can.
Sometimes you have to
Call in,
Hey, guys.
one of your northern bannermen.
Hey, everyone's having technical issues right today, so.
I was open for 4 more minutes, but it's okay. I'll go. No, I was just typing out some stuff. So, first off, I'd say that season 8 is the episode 2 of Game of Thrones. Star Wars episode
Wow.
2 of Game of Thrones.
Wow.
At first, no, it's a deep cut. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, you gotta catch up to the other podcasts.
Yeah.
At first, it's the worst season, but after watching literally any other show on TV, it's not that bad. It's actually kind of enjoyable. I actually, coming up on, I was almost dreading, I guess, this Raven's Nest because I was kind of burned out a little bit talking about Game of Thrones. I have friends who are talking to me about it, and boy, the Facebook group, as the show was going on, during the time of the show, and it was actually interesting of when talking to people afterwards, and even like last week, I talked to someone about the show and coworkers and stuff, and I was realizing as I'm listening to people grumble about the show and talk about it, and I think this is going to happen, I think this is going to happen, or post after the episode aired, and it's I think this did it for this. I was kind of thinking to myself, and I was like, man, like I'm actually a leading expert on Game of Thrones material. And like this is what this is Facebook group, this podcast, and this whole community that we have is that we take such deep dives into the show. And I was like, what you just said that's not even the direction that the directors were going in, because it's like, you get Matt, you get Ezra, you get everyone from the group. You're just like talking about stuff. It's like you know so much about the show. But I was talking to the Warlock a couple of days ago, Liam, and I decided I was going to rewatch the season. I had to. It's been a couple months. Everything is settled. I've been focusing on the reread. I've been focusing on Star Wars. I've been actually tried to watch some of the Lord of the Rings movies, for some of the guys in the group. So I've been completely separate from Game of Thrones. So today, canceled all my Saturday plans, had nothing else to do. I rewatched the entire season. And I just want to say the last couple scenes, I cried, like tears streaming down my cheeks. I really felt, and first of all, the cinematography, and I've said this before with The Long Night, which I agree with you guys, best episode of the season. The visuals, the cinematography, the way shots lined up, like when Jon killed Dany and it shows the throne behind them, and then it pans around slowly as she's dying and he's holding her, and then Drogon comes up and you hear him for a while, and then he comes up and he comes into focus. Everything shot for shot, I think, is the greatest visual show, movie, anything I've ever seen. Hands down. If they don't win every single award for cinematography, then I'm going to stop watching the award show that awards for TV shows.
Right.
It's so good. It's the best show, and that's why you circle back to episode 2, and you're like, episode 2 of Star Wars is actually a very good movie. It's like a very good movie, comparing it to other movies that are out there even. And this season was such a good show. It's such a good season, and maybe it's not season 2, maybe it's not season 4, maybe it's not season 6 of Game of Thrones, and I think that that's the standard we're trying to hold it on to. And it's not that, but it's still standalone, one of the best seasons I think that TV has produced. But you really feel, and I really felt too, and the writing, which I'll circle back to, and the spacing, which I'll circle back to as well. You really feel when Tyrion found Jaime and Cersei. Actually, when Jaime and Cersei died, like that was tough. When Tyrion finds them afterwards, and like I remember kind of hating on the long walk that Tyrion took in the beginning of the last episode, and it's like, okay, that's 4 minutes of this guy with little legs walking very far distance. Like we could have sped that up a bit, but honestly, watching it again, it made sense because you really feel. And John's like, "Oh, I should go with you or send some men with you because it's not safe." He's like, "I have to do it alone," because you see that he cares so much about his family that he had to go on this journey by himself. And when he uncovered the thing and he smashed those rocks on the ground out of frustration, out of sadness, out of every emotion, me too, man. I was smashing, like my remotes on the ground, being like, no, like, why did they have to go? They could have escaped, and you're feeling that with Tyrion. And then, same thing with Sansa getting crowned Queen of the North, and she's this strong, beautiful woman, and I'm very certain that her coronation dress, I think is the same dress as her wedding dress. I have to go back and double check that, but when she put it on, I said out loud to myself, I was like, that's her wedding dress, and it had maybe it's slightly different, but I felt that, and I felt the struggles that she went through, and when she was talking to the Hound, and he was like, if you just left with me, none of this would have happened to you. But she's honed in the fact, she's encompassed in and supported the fact that it had happened to her, and that she had to go through the struggle to be this very strong leader. And when John says, and he sincerely means it, of Eddard's daughter will lead the people and there's no better choice, it's true. I think Sansa's a almost better leader than John is. And I was really felt that. And when they were chanting Queen of the North, I was like chanting it too. And then when John met Ghost, I just that's when I lost it. I just burst out crying. I was like, oh, he meets Ghost. Ghost is proper size. He's big again. He's the size of a small horse. And him going north, and he kind of does that, is he smiling? Does he crack a smile? Does he not crack a smile as soon as the gate closes? And I was just again, I said out loud, I was like, King of the North. Like, he's king of the wall. He's king beyond the wall. Arya's Queen of the Seas, and Sansa's Queen of the North, and Bran's King of the Seven Kingdoms. And then I was like, well, obviously I'm a Stark bannerman, so I'm very happy. So I ended the whole season extremely happy. Just so many emotions. Just so happy for the Starks. They're my favorite characters, the best characters. So happy for everything else. So sad, so emotional for all the other stuff. But even a few weeks ago, and kind of seeing some memes about Daenerys and being treacherous as she is, I was thinking to myself, man, I'm here for that too. I only wish that Daenerys was more crazy. I wish she was more messed up, or burned more people, or more ruthless. I wish she killed Tyrion almost. You know what I mean? Just to show that she's really, 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 really mad. And that actually would have been pretty awesome. And it's taking that persona and just being you do you, and you're mad, you have to do it. And then there's actually a couple, again, my head's in Star Wars. So the episode 4, and it's, you talked earlier, or someone brought up that that's the turning point. The long night, we were all optimistic that it was still going to be a good season, and then episode 4, 5, and 6, it kind of gets rushed, and that's really where the spacing kind of gets a little nutty. But in that episode 4, when John's he's oh, I'm not drunk. He's maybe a little, and they kind of do that talk where he's like, "You're my queen, not my lover." It felt so much like Anakin and Padme in the Naboo scene on Star Wars Episode 2, where it's like this awkward, weird sexual tension that maybe isn't there, and it's like I just felt in the there's a fireplace crackling, and they're talking about like this is forbidden love, like type of thing. This is Star Wars. This is word for this is the exact scene over and over again. Again, that's where my head is. But I think that one of the main issues I think of the season, it would have been better to have a 10 episode, 50-minute long season. So minutes wise, I think it's 8.6 episodes, I believe, is how long the season was, 50-minute episodes. So just to have that one more episode, that 1.4 more episodes would have done so much justice to the season and would have just made it from, being hated on Twitter to like being one of the best closing seasons of the most epic show. And it's like, it gets that spacing, and it's like, you're 100% correct. When Missandei got captured, episode ended right there. You're done with the episode, move on to the next one, and it's like episode 4, the funeral, I think that's fine. Celebrating afterwards was great. End the episode after the celebration. Maybe pick a moment where Jaime sleeping with Brienne, I think, end it there or something like that, or end it with something big, but like end it like that's it, and then that's done. And it's like you really you pick up again positively. You pick up on a little of the subtleties of Sansa being like, no, the troops are tired, and then even Jon was like, there were, I think, episode 5, I think, someone was like, Dany wants to march the troops now, and Jon was like, no, sunrise earliest, like we're not doing it now, we're doing the sunrise. And like you could tell that he's even being like, okay, like you're rushing it, we need to slow down. And again, Sansa is one of the underrated, I think, leaders, and like you should have waited, for battle plans. But again, we're not war generals here. We're not criticizing based on war patterns. But that spacing, it's like, okay, you end it here, maybe a dragon dies or something like that, and it's like that's the end of the episode, falls into the water, boom, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's what I would have done. That's what would have made it good. But watching it the second time, and what's going to happen, you don't pay attention to the plot holes or the sequences that were bad, and you kind of, you don't focus on the negatives of the season. So I would challenge anybody to, if they didn't like it, wait a month, watch it again. I bet when we do a rewatch of the whole series a year from now or 2 years from now, we're not going to really have as many gripes for season 8. There's some things that could have been better, but honestly, it's like, it was still, it's, again, to go back to start, it's the episode 2. It's still the greatest show on TV ever. So that's what we're gonna think of a couple of years from now. And,
so like in comparing it to other seasons, it's like it may, as you said earlier, it didn't hit some of the hype that those had, but still all around. I mean, and I think you're right. The more we watch it, and when we do come back to it, it's like when I come back to episode 2, I'm like, it's actually it's got its moments.
Right, and even the other seasons, like for example, when I was doing my rewatch for the whole show, I was like, oh, we can skip season 5 because season 5 sucks. It's Arya, doing the House of Black and White, and it's like, it's just super boring. It sucks. It's drawn out. You got the whole Reek thing. season 5 is like one of the greatest seasons. You know what I mean? And it's like I built up in my head that it was like such a terrible season, but individually, episode to episode comparison, season 5 like really holds its ground. And if I'm gonna handpick my favorite episodes of Game of Thrones of all time, it's like I'm getting 5 episodes of my favorite. My list doesn't end. I have 5 episodes of the greatest of every season, and I'm like, which season was the bad season? And it's like when we were watching it, when we look back on it, you think, oh, that was the bad season. But then you watch that bad season, and you're like, man, this season's awesome. You get the whole Varys and Littlefinger, chaos is a pit, chaos is a ladder. You get the whole like, good moments that you're like, man, this is actually one of my favorite scenes of all time, packed in the middle of one of my least favorite seasons of all time. And it's like every season has its ups and downs, and so to compare it to season, it's like, yeah, they're all so amazing, and they all have their weakness. Every season has something that I would have changed or could have been better or could have been done differently. But then every season has like some of the best episodes I've ever seen, or some of the best moments of Game of Thrones I've ever seen. So and season 8 is no different. You like, for example, it's like The Long Night is, I think, a sum of the whole season, right? The first time everybody watched it, you couldn't see anything and it sucked. I was like, what? Was my TV even on?
Yeah.
You put the brightness up a little bit, and then boom, it's the greatest episode of season 8, and it's hands down. I mean, like, and there's so much stuff that you miss, and there's so much stuff that it's brushed off, and there's so much stuff that you have just focused in your mind that you can't see the positives of it. And it's like, oh, you couldn't see how beautiful you couldn't see how beautiful The Long Night was because it was too dark.
And I will say on that, so something I noticed the other day, and it's just a lot of people, everybody has their settings on their TV different. And, the fact that we have to have this discussion because I was rewatching Stranger Things. Like I watched it the other weekend, and then I was watching it with my girlfriend, and we were watching. So I watched it on my laptop, and then we watched it on the TV, and I was like, man, I can't like see anything. It's just because the TV is set. The TV is just set different than the screen on my laptop. And so I was, even with that show, I was like, man, this is really dark. But I'd seen it the weekend before on my laptop, 0 issue. So it's just, a lot of it is settings.
Right. And I talked about this last Raven's Nest, where I didn't realize my TV was on dramatic settings. So my brightness was on 40. I didn't turn that thing up to 60. Like, for example, like in the Long Night episode, when Melisandre comes in, right?
Yeah.
That sequence, I couldn't see a single thing, which was terrifying. And I was super scared watching the very first time through, because I couldn't see a single thing. I thought it was like White Walkers coming up, because you could just hear footprints of like something in the snow and something moving, and it's like the tension, and like my heart rate was up, which was good. Like, I'm glad I watched it on very dark because I couldn't see anything. But like then rewatching it on brightness on 60, you actually see Melisandre for 30 seconds. You see her walking up, and then you see Davos, and then it goes back to Melisandre, and then she walks up to the crowd. First time I watched it, I only saw nothing, Davos's face, Melisandre walking up to the crowd. I missed 30 seconds, 40 seconds of Melisandre walking up on a thing. And it's like, so I was just an idiot. Like, I didn't even know until I was talking to my coworkers, being like, oh yeah, we had to pause it and turn the brightness up. I was like, you can turn brightnesses up on TV. Like, it was just like it was like a super dumb moment that I had, but it changed. And then I thought, at that time, I thought The Long Night was the worst episode ever. I was like, it doesn't make sense. But then watching it again, brightness up, and it's like, okay, you got to get past. You have to unlearn what you had learned, right? Yoda's teaching, and you have to So it's like, watch Game of Thrones season 8, have your gripes, have your reasons to hate it, and then forget about why you hated it. Watch it again with a new mentality, and then see if it's different. See if it doesn't change your mind. See if it isn't one of the greater, I don't want to say like greater seasons, but see if it's a great season. You know what I mean? Just like go in, open mind. You already know what's happening. You know, just watch it for what it is. Watch it for the visuals. Watch it for the story. Which, you know, comparing it to the books, honestly, it's like, even with the show, it's like it could end the exact same. George R. Martin could write the same ending. Brand the Broken, still king. John's still north of the wall. Like, nothing changes between the books and the show. And like, even just refilm the show with like one more episode. Don't change a single thing. Just like throw in a little bit more stuff. Space it out a little bit longer. Let us, like, I didn't grasp the fact that the dragons died or the Rhaegal died. Like, it didn't hit me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't have time to let it sink in for dramatic effect. So end the episode with him dying. Let me dwell on it. Let me be sad for a whole week, and then come back in with like Missandei maybe even being in change opening episode, because it's like, you know, even with Grey Worm, like have them wash up on the shore, end the episode there, or even like end the episode during the blackout when Tyrion gets hit, and then it's like boom. I don't know anyone's fate. Everyone could be dead right now. I'm so scared for like, I think Tyrion's dead. I think Grey Worm's dead. I just saw Dragon die. Where's Missandei? What's up with the fleet? What's happening? Like, give me that angst. Give me that anxiety for next week. Again, don't change a single thing. Just end the episode where it's ended, and that changes how you view the episode. Changes the spacing of the episode, and then it just becomes instantly greater. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
More dramatic,
keep the ending, keep the story. Don't change a single thing. Keep every scene that's in there. Base it up a little bit. Throw in a couple more scenes that you didn't show. You know, and one thing that I guess I didn't really like is the fact that it's like episode 2, 3, and 4 is 100% Winterfell. I forgot about Cersei. I forgot. Like, then you see Euron Greyjoy, and you're like, oh yeah, he's also in this show
Right.
still.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like flash back to them, and that's one thing that upsets me about reading the books with Gurm is that he ends every chapter on the climax. Right? I just got done with Jaime having his fever dream, and he's like, they're like, guards, you know, help the Kingslayer. And he's like, my name's Jaime. I thought, boom, ended that chapter. And I was like, go on, like, continue. And like the chapter before that was a Davos chapter that actually took me like 3 weeks to read because it's so boring. And I would open it up right before bed, and I would fall asleep 35 seconds into reading this chapter. It was the worst chapter in the entire book. It's so boring. But the last page is when they start talking about Eric Storm, and they're leeching him, and they throw him in the fire, and he says the names, and I'm like, oh shit, this last one page is the greatest part of the whole. It's like he ends every chapter on the climax, and it's like the show could have done that and you know, done it slightly better, and it's like just that difference of, you know, it's like the show had this climax and then like resolved it and then ended boring, and you're like, what? Or it's like you forget, but the Gurm cycles through is, I guess, but what I was saying before is like George cycles through a lot of characters, so you don't actually get a full sequence, you don't get a full scene, and yet season 8 had 3 episodes of just Winterfell, which, like, hey, I could have the entire show of just be Winterfell and I wouldn't mind, but I forgot about the major plot. And if the most important thing is the Game of Thrones and the battle with Cersei, like she had like the smallest script, I think, and everyone in the whole season. She had the least amount of lines, and yet the whole focus was on her. It's like, show me her. You know what I mean? Like, show me her battle plan. Show us them making the scorpions to shoot down a dragon. show us that like, oh, you intercepted a thing. It's like, oh, Daenerys is coming home and like have her welcome party or something like that. Like, I don't know.
And then her defense is defeated so quickly that
What?
no,
what?
like
Why?
Cersei's.
I know it's another thing. I just like that's one thing I didn't get over. The Golden Company. It's like, yeah, I get it. Daenerys just messed up your city with one dragon, but it's like she had 10 seconds. Cersei had 10 seconds of, and our defenses are great because we have a scorpion every 10 feet on the battlements. Boom, they're defeated. It's like have Qyburn question her and be like, hey, what if Daenerys does this? And like show us a weakness in your defense, and then you know what I mean? It's like they miss so many opportunities.
They built up the Night King more than they built up her. Because they had the scenes of talking about this is what death is, where Sam was talking about this is what death is.
And the show is Game of Thrones. It's not about the Night King. You know what I mean? Like the whole show is about who's gonna win the Iron Throne, and it's like don't build up the Night King. Then exactly, it's like build up Cersei more. Show us what the show is about, and again, don't change anything. Don't don't cut scenes. Film like 1 or 2 more scenes, keep the exact same season that you just had, put in 50 more minutes of filler that helps develop a plot, and it's instantaneously best season in Game of Thrones history. That's it. There was just they missed it by so little that that's a little upsetting. But again, I don't want to lose track and focus on the negative, whereas still had some of the greatest moments in Game of Thrones history, like for example, Tormund. Hey, which of you cowards shit in my pants? Like, the whole anything Tormund does actually in season 8 is the greatest. Like, throw more of that stuff in there, and it's like, you know what I mean? Let's focus more on that. Again, some of the greatest lines in Game of Thrones, most quotable lines happen in this season. This season's still one of the greatest Game of Thrones seasons out there, in tie with the other 7. So it's a 8-way tie, fortunately. But yeah, you know what I mean. So I guess that's kind of my ending thought on the season. I can't wait to watch it again in a year. Rewatch it after the dust is settled, after the newest show comes out, after we get all of the books and I see how the book ends, and then I'll go back and I'll watch the show. And I think on my rewatch then, ask me 10 years from now, I think it'll be one of the greatest shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, well, let's go ahead and see. Let's grab Maglum here, because he unfortunately was experiencing technical difficulties. Let's see if he's ready to go here. So Maglum, I have you unmuted here. So let's see, try it now and see if you're good to go.
Good. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Ezra, you also are having a little bit of a audio distortion. Sometimes when you talk, it seems like it's taking Discord a second to kind of catch your voice.
Good Lord.
What am I supposed to do, man? Jiminy.
I don't know, man. So Magnum, I have you unmuted here if you're ready to go. Maybe not. If anybody else is ready to go, we could throw them in.
I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if Sir Matt can hear you though. That's the thing. I mean, yeah. What's weird is Sir
there
Matt.
We go.
I
there we go. Sorry, I had him. I
think it might be you.
I had it. Yep, I had him muted there. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm gonna first of all say good thoughts to Lord Adam Parker, and I have to agree really very much, especially with the whole visual aspect was so good. Like I love just the little things like in that last episode how you had all ash instead of being snow, because it was back to her vision in the House of the Undying, where she saw the whole place covered in snow, but it was ash from the fire she'd caused, which was a great little callback and touch, which I thought was really cool. And there's obviously that fantastic scene where you see Drogon taking off behind Daenerys as she walks out, and just the wings fan out behind her. It was really, really good. It's like one of the best visual things I've seen. But at the same time, there were problems, and yet it comes down a lot to the time they had and how they used it. And that's why I think, honestly, the episodes which I think were the weakest were probably like 4 and 5, because they were trying to do so much in those episodes. Like, part of the reason why episode 3 worked was the whole episode was just spent focusing on this one battle. They had a lot of time to show the course of the battle and how things changed around. It was just this full-scale representation of everything that's happening in it. And that's why it worked well as an episode. The reason episode 2 worked was because it was like the calm before the storm. It was this great moment of reflection for all the characters to have some moment and a bit of time. And then episodes 4 and 5 happened, and it was just rush. We need to get to this ending because we've spent half our season at Winterfell, and whoopsie doopsie daisies. Right. So then episode 6 again was a lot better. And I've said before, there's the only time in this season that Daenerys felt like Daenerys to me was right before she died in episode 6. Because she just had this like lovely moment of like just naive wonder, and that felt like her. And that's part of the reason why her death was really sad, because you felt like, oh, she's coming back. She's being herself again. And like, nope. And that was disappointing. But the other thing which got me, and I know this is going to annoy a lot of people, but I do that from time to time with my opinion, but there's a big North bias in this season.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it comes down to everyone from the North, good guys who we want to go for, and then like every other leader, bad guy who you don't like. And they even did that with Daenerys, which is part of the reason why it was annoying, because they didn't show her as being this nuanced character with like really good motivations behind her actions. They just said, nah, and even the title people are giving her, they're saying, oh, she's the mad queen. It's like, hang on, that's like really just taking away the idea that she could have any logical or rational thought behind her actions, any reasoning behind what she does. I'm not saying what she does is right, but I'm saying that they kind of just framed everything she did, made everything she did the ultimate like uber bad guy evil times. And I wasn't a fan of that. And then like the peak of the moment which made me realize there's like this North bias going on was actually during that council at the end. And Sansa has her whole moment where she's like, oh, the North will remain an independent kingdom as it was for hundreds of years. And they're all just like looking at her like, yeah, that's cool. And I'm like, hang on, Quentin Martell's right there. Dorne was independent longer than the North was. If anyone's got a right to claim they were the best at being an independent kingdom, it's Dorne. And it's just, all this is just forgotten in favor of the North being so wow and so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I like the North, but at the same time, it's not flawless. And the whole thing is nothing in the show should be treated as being a flawless thing. And it comes down to that. It's like they ran out of time, and they ran out of time for nuance. And the only two characters who I really think kept a lot of their like both good and bad sides in it was Jaime. I actually quite liked what they did with Jaime. I think like him going on a self-destructive quest to try and save Cersei makes sense for him. It's the sort of thing he would do. Even though he's like tried to move beyond her and found this like better relationship. Like being with Brienne would have been better for him. They were better for each other. She wasn't going to treat him like and manipulate him the same way Cersei was. They had a better understanding. She was a better person. But it's this sort of, he's got an addiction to Cersei. He can't realistically ever fully leave her. He can't ever fully put her out of his mind. So he has to go back for her. And I liked that. I thought it was good because like, he's not a bad person. He's just making bad decisions because of the nature of his past and his relationships. And then the other person who felt like still nuanced to me was Melisandre. Because I don't think she ever really apologized for, murdering a child.
Nope.
She still thinks right to the end what she did. She's like, I did it for the sake of the world. I'm not going to apologize. She's did something bad, but she's got her reasoning for it, and it's treated as such as being both good and bad as a nuanced type thing. Like, she does a lot of good things to try and like save the world, but yeah, she burnt a child alive. That's kind of bad. It's a bit of that depth coming to it, and I have to say, like, again, what Lord Adam Parker brought up was probably correct. We'll probably see a lot of similar things happen in the books. As much as I hate to admit it, we'll probably see Daenerys spiral downhill in the book. And that makes me really sad, but we probably will. But I assume that there will be a lot more setup because the books have more time, and Martin's been working on these books for ages. I mean, that might be part of the reason why, because he's like, I'm going to be bringing down a character that so many people love. I've got to do this really well. I've got to take my time and make sure it's executed really well, because otherwise people are going to hate it, and I'm going to hate it. So it comes down to, like, the same thing can happen, but the little differences and the little nuances can make it a fundamentally different story. If you give Daenerys her spiral going more effectively from earlier, it would be a lot stronger as a moment. Like, and it could be done a lot stronger. Like, you see, basically the only piece of foreshadowing, which I say is active foreshadowing towards what happens with her, is her burning the Tarleys. But again, that could be viewed as just her having an outburst of just this frustration and anger that she does from time to time. But again, you could argue that frustration and anger outbursts, like she does occasionally have, could be signs of this. But everyone has moments where they just lose their shit when they've just had everything go against them again and again and again. It's not something which makes you insane. I don't know. It's just a bit of a hard thing to always get into the right situation, especially when you're trying to completely enact a character change from, what's it called? A face heel turn? Yeah, face heel turn.
Yep.
It's a little bit the wrestling term.
The wrestling term, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, that's the best way to put it, is she's going from a face to a heel. And so it's very hard, because you're going to have a lot of people like me who really liked her who are going to be very upset by that. But just going to say, though, like, my absolute favorite moment of the season, though, I know I'm going from bad to good really quickly here, but I'm just trying to get things out, is still like that bit in episode 2 with Old Stones, because I just love moments where shows take a bit of time to reflect and use good music to help communicate the emotion. And there's so much in that song. I freaking love Old Stones. It's really pretty and really nice. And they've only done a few voiced songs in the show, but they're all generally pretty good. I had also an alternative idea as well, like, if you're like saying an alternative idea for a way the ending could have gone. So this will be an upsetting ending, and it wouldn't be a happy ending. But have it be Jon doesn't kill Daenerys, and he goes along with her plans because he loves her, and he can't do it. He can't bring himself to sacrifice love for duty again. He's done it before, and he's like, I can't be like that. It doesn't make me happy. And you see, like, something down the line of, like, her, I don't know, destroying, like, Winterfell or something, because it's going against Sansa's going against her, and she's, like, gotten destroyed by her. And then while you see it, like, just from, like, Jon, like, falling behind her saying, and you get an instrumental in the background of the song for, like, the hands of gold are always cold, but a woman's hands are warm. Get something like that and use music really well to effectively set up a bad moment. But I kind of like bad endings to a degree. I'm a bit of a sadist to characters. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I just started thinking about as you were kind of talking about the ending and that moment is, as I think about the books, and you talk about Gur taking so long to write them, it's because it may not just be because he has to, say, kill Daenerys, but I start thinking about, when we see the scene of a couple seasons ago, I think it's season 6 when it happens, of Jorah Mormont getting the grayscale removed. Well, that's not going to be Jorah Mormont in the books. That's possibly going to be John Connington. So we have to start thinking about what are the things we're seeing, and what are these alternate characters whose roles they're going to be. They're going to be blended. R plus L equals J isn't even confirmed yet in the books, and there is that enormous character of young Griff, who we've talked about in some of our other patron episodes. It could be a team of young Griff and Daenerys, or it theoretically. I just started thinking, like, what happens if say Daenerys die? What if young Griff is in a scenario where he has to kill Daenerys, and then young Griff turns out to legitimately be Aegon, which would be Rhaegar's first son, and then it would be brother versus brother, right? And Jon having to fight his true older brother. that's, you know, I mean, that could still be that idea of love and family and something. You could still go down that same route. So it's just, it's the books, just the difference of so many characters. I just start thinking about what are these threads we've seen in the show that are probably going to be filled by different people in the books.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I love what you're saying there. I love the idea of having young Griff actually legitimately be Aegon, because there's so much emotional stake and investment for Jon and Daenerys both, who are two of our most central characters, if he really is. If he isn't, then he can be treated so much more as a throwaway character. But if he really is Aegon, then you could have so many good character moments based just purely upon that. And I think that's really fantastic. So it'd be a lot trickier to make use of, but I think Martin could do it. He's really great. He could write something really good. And so, yeah, that's why I say before, like, I don't think he is. I think he probably is a Blackfire, but I so hope he really is Aegon, because it would just be fantastic for a character standpoint.
Yeah. So all right. Some people are just posting. Let me just some. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Magnum. That was great. Do we have somebody that wants to go next here? We'll get them all squared away here.
Somebody
Sending a long chat here. Don't
I think we have a couple. I think we have a couple people. Lady Liz here. Yeah, Lady Liz, go ahead and post it. And we'll read it, because I think some people I think some people are at work, and so we'll just need them to we'll need to read it. But I mean, go ahead, sir.
Matt. Well, I've been sitting here just kind of listening to what you were saying, and you literally blew my mind with the whole. I never really thought about. We've talked about different characters kind of replacing or the show streamlining stuff, and but. Yeah, will John Connington actually be at the Citadel for some reason?
Well, I mean, let's say that he shows up at the Citadel and Sam has to free him. Maybe that's how Sam finds out in the books. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
in some text.
Maybe it's not in some book he reads, but being told to him by Jon Connington, Rhaegar Targaryen's best friend. And that changes everything, because for Jorah to get the grayscale and show up, and the show writers who, have to know what's going on in the books would have said, okay, we need to get this character to here and this character to here, and let's maybe blend this from the books. So, like Batman vs. Superman is a great example. You and I have talked at length about this, where they said, okay, we're kind of going to make this movie, and here's some of the source material we kind of want to base it on. So let's kind of use an aspect from this, and an aspect from this, and an aspect from this. Yeah. Well, to me, as I start thinking about this more and more, I'm thinking, so if Jon Connington finds his way to the Citadel, does that mean that young Griff wins the battle at Storm's End and something else happens? Because how else would he get there if they're using it in the show? That leads me to believe that's probably something that happens in the books, and Jorah Mormont's going to get back to Daenerys in some other way, and they don't need to do the whole grayscale thing. So I think that is probably a point that I think you can pull, and those are things we'll be diving into more as we do a lot of this show to book stuff on that we're doing on Patreon. But I'm just saying, Maglin brought up a really good point when he was talking about Ger's been writing these forever, and it just got me kind of thinking. Sorry, I'm going on a kind of tangent here, but
that's okay, because one thing
Magnum said that I liked as well was the idea that, like, his alternative, or the different ending. If John actually does love Dany and just goes along with it, that actually could be what young Griff does. Mm-hmm. Maybe he does fall in love with his aunt. Still be him falling in love with an aunt, right? If he really is Aegon. Mm-hmm. And maybe he goes along with some of the craziness, or I don't know. There's a whole other angle there if he really is Aegon.
Absolutely. It would change everything. It would drastically change. It could still end up being Jon and Dany versus Cersei if maybe Cersei tries to marry Aegon or something. There's tons of different scenarios to go with here.
Yeah, absolutely. You even have that whole drama between, like, Jon choosing between quote real family that he was raised with, and then now fighting either a brother or an aunt. So he can still be, R plus L can still equal J, but you have Aegon, and it's just a whole other curveball. So so cool.
All right. Okay. Let's read. We got Lady Liz here, and I don't know her name.
Lady Mary.
Yeah.
Lady Mary as well.
Lady Mary. Okay. Yeah. I just see her name here. Okay. I have my response ready. Okay. Lady Liz. I'm a Stark loyalist, so I was so happy with the ending of their arcs. I was so prepared for at least one or two of them to die. At the end of last season, I was so convinced that there was no way all four of them are going to make it through the show alive. Every single time Arya was in danger, my heart almost stopped. They kept playing with my emotions. Sansa becoming Queen of the North was by far one of my favorite moments in the Game of Thrones. Her entire arc, I was so satisfied because she was the character I've always rooted for since season 2. Arya being free and exploring the world fits her nature perfectly. Bran being king, a little skeptical about, but the more and more I read up on their theories, I'm personally all for the overall villain Bran and him being a tool for the Children of the Forest to get back at men or something similar. Maybe him being marked by the Night King, did something that made him more vengeful and a higher motive to just become king. He said himself he couldn't be lord of anything, but he accepts the position of king. Just not entirely sure how that works through the entire process. Jon leaving made sense to me because he was over with Southern politics. He never wanted to be a leader, and all he ever wanted was to be a ranger. He rose to leadership not because he wanted to, and he was happy doing it, and he was good at it. Dany's entire character arc was great. Yes, some of her descent was a little rushed, but as Tyrion said in the episode, it was there. Drogon's reaction to Dany, though, broke me. The only thing I thought about it was the scene in The Lion King where Simba is trying to wake up Mufasa, and I was crying. Sorry if this was a little bit long. No, it's perfectly great. And she says, Lord Adam Parker got a lot of my thoughts perfectly as the season as a whole. Yeah. I'm also, you and I both, Sir Ezra, said we thought Sansa would win the whole thing. So she didn't necessarily win the whole thing, but she got kind of, what she ultimately wanted. Arya exploring, and Bran being king. This is something I think has kind of irked a lot of people. And I'm going to keep pounding the podium here about the differences between the show and the book, because I was watching an interview with Gurr where he was asked a question about who is the most difficult character to write, and he said it's Bran, because all of the other characters are mostly adults and he has to write this story through the eyes of a child.
Yeah.
And, the show also, I don't think, handles Bran nearly as well as the books do. A lot of his arc has been focused on other characters like Jojen, right, and Mira, and so they eat up a lot of his time. Whereas when you read the Bran chapters throughout the book, which you've done, right, you've done a full Bran read through.
Yeah. Read through. Yeah.
And it really is. He really is this character coming up in this world and having to face the challenges of being different, and he is another character who is always he always wanted to be something, just like Sansa always wanted to be a queen and marry somebody, and then she gets it in the end. And Bran always just kind of wanted to be a knight. Well, maybe he can't be a knight, but then that line where Tyrion talks about his story was great. His story is in the show. His story is great. I mean, everybody has great stories. I mean, he is this kid who is crippled and goes beyond the wall and survives and gets this magical foresight and comes back down and helps defeat the Night King. And it's gonna, because there will be more context in the books. I think it'll be better, and I think Bran's ending will make, if he does ultimately become king, it'll make more sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, and as you said, George was saying that it's hard to write his character, and it's because of things like, he's a child who wants to be a knight, and so with his powers and abilities, he kind of pushes the limits a little bit. Like he hops into Hodor, and whereas maybe an adult would say, "Oh, that's kind of crossing the line. I'm taking over someone else's mind here," whereas he just sees it. I mean, he kind of did it unexpectedly the first time, but then continues to do so as he's like, he's attracted to Mira and wanting to be up, moving around, doing his own thing, and he kind of takes advantage of that situation a little bit. So yeah, it's something that's hard to navigate. Like, so as a writer, I would imagine.
and think about the show. How the show immediately got nervous when the Dorne scenes started to have less. The ratings weren't as great as they hoped, so they said, "Well, just scratch all that." Well, what's to say that they felt like the Bran stuff? I mean, some of the people I've talked to just throughout the entire series, they're like, yeah, I don't really like Bran. Just because, it's kind of weird and it's creepy. And then he misses an entire season. The show completely cuts him out of an entire season. So,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It will go differently. And also, I love to. I went on Reddit the other day. And I found someone who said that again brought up the whole point of like that Bran will be king, but king of what, or which type of king? Will he be? Or when Dan and Dave sat down and they were talking to George, and he said that they gave him the answer. Their answer was. That they answered correctly, not that their answer was correct. People are throwing out all these little nuggets to kind of suggest the show may be drastically different, even even after what we've seen. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, Magnum had a really good point in the chat here. He said it's hard to write for a child because children aren't necessarily stupid, but they do have a more simplified view of the world, and in ways both more and less self-centered than an adult. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lord Adam Parker, do you think he got paid for that season? I'm guessing not. Probably, I would probably say no.
Right.
All right. Lady Mary's here. Sorry that I said this took so long. That's okay. So first, huge fan of the podcast. I've been listening since April during my commute, and I just went back to the beginning of the reread, and I'm following along from the beginning. I can't wait to dive deep into the books now with you guys. So I've been a huge fan of the show since the beginning. I've watched as they air every year, and I have to say that I have to agree with what most people have said about the season as a whole. The cinematography was gorgeous, the music incredible, and I loved the first 3 episodes. But then there was definitely a shift, and the ending was so left field I couldn't wrap my head around it even after we were watching it a few times. I thought that Dany going Mad Queen wasn't unbelievable, but at the same time there wasn't enough development for me to believe that she could get to that point with what was shown. The season seriously needed it to be at least 2 episodes longer, if not more. I felt like D&D just wanted it to be done, and they were just kind of like, yeah, okay, that'll work. Let's do that for the last 3 episodes of the season. I will always absolutely love the show, but I wish that I felt better about the ending. My main complaint is that the Night King was built up so much more important, and while I'm listening to you guys do the reread from the start, you guys discuss what you think will happen, and you both talk a lot about how the big role you think the Night King will play in the show, and you thought it would be a hell of a lot more important than it ended up being. I don't think that season 7 seasons of build up about the Night King and the White Walkers was worth that ending at all. Cersei was treated as the main villain, and I get that, but at the same time, they should have done way more with the Night King storyline for all the build up and screen time they gave it. I will obviously go back and rewatch, and I can't wait to get to the books, but I honestly hope the ending will be totally different from the show. I love what you guys do, and I love the rabbit hole theories. So keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, it would be interesting to go back and listen to some of our episodes and hear what we were thinking how we thought. But, Sir Ezra, so let's say that, and you and I have talked about this, the possibility that it could be flipped somehow. That
I was just about to
talk about. Yes.
So okay, so let's say this for example. Let's say that I talked about this in my musing on Patreon about the original outline, and how the original outline makes it seem like the war with the White Walkers will be the final battle with the others, the Long Night. And so if the ending of the show was Arya killing the Night King, would people be more happy?
Wow. I mean,
so
maybe.
Let's say that, let's say if you flip it around, if say they take King's Landing and then they say, okay, now like we've got the White Walkers coming, we've got to finish this, or maybe the White Walkers are coming, so they're like, hey, we can't fight here. We're going to have to fight Cersei first, right? And so they fight Cersei first, and then they go back up to Winterfell because that's just where they're at, and that's the battle they have, because they realize, hey, but like, hey, we got to have the battle here before he gets to King's Landing, and so that's where the final. And if we lose here, we lose everything, something along those lines to really kind of sum it up and get to that. But so, if it ends with the Night King battle, with Arya killing the Night King, and that's it, do you think people would be more like less upset?
Yes, I
do. Actually, the other thing I think is that I think in the books it will end with the Night King still. The Great Battle.
Right.
I don't think it's gonna end in King's Landing. And here's something else. I think the pickle they may be in is that young Griff and Daenerys may take King's Landing that way, and she may she may start to go kind of mad and crazy. And then Jon, once he realizes that they are family, has to figure out a way, the great negotiator, right? He brings the wildlings in. No, we need their help. Well, yeah, she's the Mad Queen. She just destroyed all of King's Landing. But here's the deal, guys. There's an army that's coming from the north that's going to kill all of us. So we need her too. So he may be that guy that's in this pickle. And then at the end, he still may kill her. It may be that they lose young Griff along the way, and he realizes that the love interest could actually be between Aegon and Daenerys, still a nephew and with his aunt, whatever.
Well,
so
think about the line that Sansa has in the 3rd episode when she's down in the crypt with Tyrion, and she's talking about how the Dragon Queen won't let that happen.
Yeah.
So clearly, they're still down there thinking, well, what happens even if we win this battle? So, I mean, I think it's entirely possible that if you could still have that where they beat the Night King, and then Daenerys is like, well, I'm your queen now, and then he like that. But so that same thing happens, but at Winterfell instead of King's Landing.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I mean that would be a way to do it for sure.
Because there's too many other characters in the books that are more significant for it to happen the same. Yeah, I mean the outcome could be the same. It could still end with Bran being king, Jon killing Dany, but there will be different circumstances just because of the characters that we have.
Yeah, sure.
That's the thing. That's why we're still excited about the book series, and we're anxiously awaiting Winds of Winter and everything. And that's why it matters to keep doing the reread and keep thinking about how this is going to be different. Okay, I mean, I hadn't thought of the whole John Connington piece with. I know that he has it, but like the grayscale. But I was like, well, he could take.
Well, and
Jorah's place,
and the other thing is just wait, because it was just reported that there was an enormous direwolf scene that got cut.
Yeah.
And so what all else did they film that wasn't like, hey, they filmed stuff here to throw people off? What all else did they film that they were going to use that they had to cut?
Yeah.
That's going to be very telling. And what I kind of want to do now is I kind of want to go back to about season 6 and 7 and start rewatching 6, 7, and 8 and being like, okay, like what is this? Where are the blends at? Like that this is going to be a character. This whole like the John Connington piece. You and I now are super focused on because I think it's really important. Is okay. So what does that say? What have we seen in the show that's going to tell us something about a character that's a book only character where you have that kind of blend or that merging of characters? Because that is the important things.
Yeah, that could be telling
for sure. Right.
Okay.
Wow,
right.
Okay.
So we got another one here by Ralph. Sir Ralph. My expectations for the show was always kind of low. I disagree with a lot of what the creators did during, but at the end they had to get to where Gur told them. Since I read the books in 2011, I have strongly suspected that Jon is going to kill Daenerys. He is the Song of Ice and Fire. he is the balance between the two extremes that humanity faces, ice and fire, White Walkers and Dany. The fact that Jon ends up in the North is a sentiment of how he embraces being a Stark and not a Targaryen. I don't really agree with him being exiled. I think it would have to be his decision, rejecting the throne and going to live freely in the North. I think it would be his choice in the books. Sansa is going to be queen in the North in the books, or at least a regent for Rickon. Arya ended up roaming freely just as Nymeria has done this whole time. Seeing her sailing and exploring reminded me of one of her heroes, the warrior, which she named her direwolf, Nymeria. Perhaps what I see different on the books is Bran being king at the end. I don't know what Gur will do. I can see him being more of like an advisor to the king or to all the kingdoms if they split up, or somehow the old gods and the children of the forest use Bran's body to gain power and revenge their past defeat. Like Lady Liz, I'm a Stark loyalist. The story was above all about the Starks. The last book was going to be called A Time for Wolves. So seeing the epilogue of the series showing all the Starks was cool to me. Good point.
Yeah, those are really good
Points. I like the idea that Jon would have a choice, right? At the end, that he chooses to kind of go on his own and do his own thing because he is a true champion. I mean, he's the true warrior who is facing down ice and fire, and I like that a lot. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So. All right, we have one. I think that's just about everybody who's in here. So we have one left, Sir David the Huntsman, if he is ready. So I have him, Sir David. I got you live here. So
what's up, boys?
Hey, how's it going?
It is going. It's going. Oh man. So just a sort of general observation about the season. When I was watching it, I was super excited. I was captivated throughout pretty much the entire thing. I didn't think too much about it as I was watching. Now, after that, I got to overthinking things.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. I wrote down a couple of notes just as I was sort of thinking about things. So, why couldn't Jon have been the king of seven, or the king of everything? Why couldn't he have been king? Why? I don't know. I just, the scene between him and Dany when he kills her, I actually really love that scene. It was a beautiful scene. And we've talked a lot about the cinematography and music and all that stuff. That's great and all. I really love that, but why? Why stop him from just taking it all? Because of his honor? Because he's too much like Ned Stark? Okay, that's fine. I watch way too many 90s movies where the good guy just kind of kicked everybody's butt and then took over, so I guess that just didn't sit very well with me. And I love Dany. I love Daenerys' character. I would have been perfectly fine with her being on the throne despite literally burning everything. I don't know if I'm in the minority on that, but it was kind of nuts, the whole thing, but like I would have been okay with her being on the throne too. But I mean, if you're truly gonna like fulfill prophecy, I'm fine with that. But then we get into meme territory, and at the very end, the Unsullied leave, and Jon still has to go beyond the wall. And again, I ask myself, why?
Yeah.
Because Bran's king, which is another thing, and maybe I just haven't thought about it enough. I didn't really like that. I didn't really like him becoming king. There was something about that just really bothered me because he wasn't very well fleshed out. Now, if he would have been like this BA character that I think he will be in the books, I might be okay with it. But just the way he was portrayed in the show, it's like, I hate to say it, but what was the purpose? I mean, what was the purpose of you do this epic training with the man in the tree, and then what? You make Hodor go crazy, and then that's it. So I was a little disappointed in that personally. The sequence of the show, I think I've said this before to least Sir Ezra, but this thing needed to be like double the length. I remember when I watched the first episode and it ended. It was an hour, right, or it was just maybe over an hour, I think. And I was like, "There's not more. Like, I'm not gonna get like an hour and a half." And then just being as short as it was, and with so many filler episodes, you had all these setup episodes where nothing really action wise was happening. We got the we got the great Jamie Brienne relationship. And I'm sorry, I just didn't really care about that either. I just thought it was so out of left. It wasn't out of left field for the show, but I don't know. I wasn't really feeling that. Then you just throw Thorman away. Oh, you know what? Just go back beyond the wall. We don't need you to help out. I mean, just for sheer comic relief in the show, the guy has some of the best lines in the entire show.
Yeah.
But then you're just like, nah, take Ghost. It's cool, man. We'll catch up with you later, big guy. So, I don't know. I don't want to feel like I'm nitpicky, but I am getting rather nitpicky. The other thing is, so John kills Daenerys, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So wouldn't he then become the leader of the Dothraki? I think somebody said that in the group at one point. Isn't that kind of how that works? And
Yeah.
their Dothraki left. I mean, we saw them on the field. They didn't all die.
Right. Yeah.
It is kind of unorthodox, just the way that even her becoming the leader of
Well, I don't know though, because that's something that's not entirely explained. Because when Khal Drogo dies in the show, I mean, he's technically killed by another Dothraki because he gets hit and he gets poisoned. But in the books, he gets wounded hunting, right? Isn't it's?
Yeah, I think
he's.
You're right.
I don't think,
I'm not 100% on that.
I have to go back exactly to that chapter because I think it is slightly different. But I mean, if the Dothraki were to try to take a city and then they died, I don't think the Dothraki would then follow.
Well, somebody's got to take power, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if you're cutting the head off the Hydra, so to speak, that's a good place to start, maybe. But I mean, he is Westerosi, so I guess that might also. But I'm just getting
for sure
a little bit. The dragons. So I had a very specific sort of idea in my mind about how this whole thing was going to end, which totally turned out to not be correct. So you had in the show, you had Euron killing one of the dragons. That's another thing I wasn't super, super happy about because, I always kind of had the feeling that Jon was going to kill Dany, but I would have really, really enjoyed having a second actual dance of dragons, just having them fighting it out dragon style. I mean, I know technically, Daenerys is mother of dragons and are all her kids, but it seemed to take to Jon pretty well. So why not? Why couldn't you have had a dragon battle?
Yeah.
I just think that would have been pretty epic myself.
Yeah, it would have been. That would have been cool.
I mean, it would have been. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's sort of like they're her dragons. It's one thing in the book. I mean, some people theorize that there may be other dragons actually over by Ahai and stuff too.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that I nitpick a little bit about is a sequence of events. And I think it was already kind of mentioned there, but so we deal with the Night King, and I'm sorry it was rushed. You build this whole thing up. Obviously, that's not in the books, but you build up the Night King. He's supposed to be this, VA javelin throwing, dragon killing guy. And okay, so you kill him. I'm fine with Arya killing him. That's cool. I like Arya. But then your big boss is Cersei down in King's Landing with her scorpions, and then you just massacre everybody. I don't know. I just kind of feel like if you flip the sequences, it would have been maybe a little bit more interesting, I guess. But again, like, I enjoyed watching the show. As I was watching it episode to episode, week to week, I had a great time watching it. It was very satisfying. But it's just, again, like, when you start looking back and start overthinking some of this stuff, because I've enjoyed every single season up to this. And I have very little nitpick aside from obvious discrepancies between book and series. I mean, you mentioned John Connington. There's no John Connington here. I'm forgetting the name of the character who actually married Ramsay Bolton, because it wasn't Sansa. What was her name?
Jane Poole.
Yeah, Jane Poole.
Okay, Jane Poole. Sorry, I forgot the name. So again, like, there's always going to be tweaks and adaptations, but I don't know. I feel like if they maybe just extended the series, gave more episodes, or at bare minimum longer episodes to explain more, maybe I wouldn't have been that critical later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just general thought. Now, you also asked the question, will it be different between the books and the series? So there's obviously been some questions thrown at old George about that, but to be honest with you, I think it's going to be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be completely different. I think it's going to blow people's minds when they actually get it, when he actually gets it done.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows when that's going to be? But I think it's going to be completely different, and I think it will be, to be honest with you, more satisfying than the series. So that's just my opinion, but that's kind of what I had thought
for sure.
on. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
I think so too. I think it's going to be way more satisfying. And what he says today, it's like we're not even finished with. Well, he's getting there with Winds of Winter, but he may change his mind. He talks about how the writing grows, and to finish a thing is what's hard, and that's why we're so, I think, critical about season 8. It's like if this were just if we knew season 9 was coming, I think we'd be like, wow, this is intense. This is crazy. If we knew there was more, but since we know there is no more, we're kind of like, wow, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, or it's over. Everything kind of comes to, an end here, and it's just so unique because of those writers, those show writers, having to know source material and knowing the end game and trying to figure out the sequence of events to get there. It's something else. So
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh,
all right.
goodness.
Well, Sir Ezra, I think that is just about everybody. So, yeah, a lot of really great discussions today, guys. We always super appreciate these. Thanks for hanging in here with us, even though we've been having some technical issues across the board. It seems like.
yeah. Sorry
about that.
Yeah, but yeah, I definitely think we're gonna have to do. Oh no, Magnum, not you. It's Sir Ezra mostly. I'm putting all the blame on him today. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
I clearly had one too there. So, yeah, but it seems like something that we're gonna have to do about this is just more of these book to show kind of comparisons. Where do we think it's gonna go? What can we learn from the 3 final seasons there that are different than the books? I think you and I both heavily agree on Sir Ezra as Hodor. You and I both think that is 100% going down the same way in the books.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing, right? Is we want people to send us theories and thoughts, and still send your Ravens about, now we're shifting, go back a couple seasons and look at characters that have merged and maybe how this thing could be different, and the same, right? I think that'll be a lot of fun to speculate on, and yeah, so
absolutely. All right, well, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you in a week as we continue the reread. Sir Ezra, it's time to sign off here.
Yeah, and also I want to mention
just real quick, our Discord server, if you haven't had a chance to go check it out, it's completely updated. We've got things on there. Cosplay, buy, sell, book-to-book discussion. If you're on, Dance of Dragons, you want to talk about right now, there's a discussion thread for that, and I will be in all of those. talking with people, and the Facebook group is still super active. So just go take a look at it. We've reformatted it and had some pretty cool stuff in there. But yeah, so if you like our podcast, forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We will see you in a week, and remember that winter is coming.